In today's video, I want to talk about database transactions. So, this actually came about by a question from a listener. And the question was, a transaction is always initiated with a begin transaction and would end with either a save point, a rollback, or a commit. Is that right? And my answer is pretty much correct. Transactions, but only the end with a commit or a rollback. A commit persists the data changes, and a rollback goes back to the state of the data before the transaction started. Now, save points are kind of like segments of a transaction. They allow you to segment the transaction into smaller chunks and specify the rollback or commit to go to that save point. So I'll start out with a definition, and you can screenshot this and read this later. I'm just going to gloss over the main concepts. But basically, a database transaction is a unit of work. And what a unit of work is, it's basically a change in the database that you would like to either persist in its completion or roll back. It's either an all or none thing. And they have two purposes. The first is to provide reliable units of work so that you can recover in case there's a failure. And the second is to provide isolation between programs accessing a database concurrently. So you may have multiple sessions that are trying to operate on the same data at the same time, and transactions and locking in a database are what enable things to work in a manner which things can be controlled so that you don't have things happening in an inconsistent or erroneous outcome. So they sometimes are made up of multiple operations, and that's really where they get a little bit more complicated, which is if you got a couple of updates that need to be done, and you don't want one of those to be persisted and the other not. They need to all go together or not. And a great example in that most people can understand is the transfer from one bank account to another with maybe an ATM machine. And that's an example I like to explain to people because a lot of people understand that most people have a bank account, they have an ATM, and they've gone through this type of transaction before. So let's dig into that. So here we go. We got our ATM bank transfer. We want to transfer $100 from our savings account to our checking account. So this involves two actions. The first is we need to deduct the $100 from our savings, and the second is we want to deposit $100 to the checking. So my question is, just so you understand, what do you think would happen if the system died after the deduction was made? And how would you feel if the deposit didn't make it to your checking account and you lost $100? So that is the real life effect of not having transactions in place. If you didn't have a transaction in place and you deducted from savings and the system died at that point, it would not roll it back. And so you would basically lose that $100. So transactions were created to deal with situations exactly like this. Question mentioned save points, and I want to give a little more detail as to what save points are. And they're basically points in the transaction that allow you to roll it back to a certain point without rolling back the entire transaction, so that they enable like nested or sub transactions, and they make partial rollback possible. So the syntax is you just say save transaction and then you give it a name. And then when you go to roll back to that point, that save point name, you have to specify the name of the save point with the rollback transaction statement. I want to wrap up just going over the basic syntax of a transaction. So you would say begin work or begin transaction in your program, and then you would issue an insert statement, for example, into a table. And then a save point would be save transaction, and then I'm just giving a name after the insert. So I know that basically this transaction can be segmented into just this insert statement. And then I go and I update some other date table and I delete data from another table. And again, nothing has been committed yet. So if the transaction were to die at this particular point, everything would be rolled back as if it never happened. And then I've got a choice. Do I want to commit, which would commit all of these statements, the insert, the update, and the delete, or I could roll back And us, like I said before, even if it died, it would all just roll back on its own. So you would have no insert, no update or delete. Or I could roll back to this particular statement. So that would undo these. And then I could decide I just want to commit the insert or continue on with trying to do something else after that point in time. So that's the basic syntax. That's it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching. Please like if you liked the content, consider subscribing. And of course, if you have questions with database transactions or anything else database related, please send them to me. Talk to you later. Bye.